Managing land. So land resources. So examples of land resources that you may purchase for a garden include things like sand, mulch, peat moss, topsoil, landscaping rocks, etc. Now, just because these are all things directly from the land doesn't necessarily mean that's the only things that will be land resources, but that's just some examples. Now, land provides places for humans and other organisms to live and interact. So if you build a house, that is using a land resource to build a house. If you have a park, that is using a land resource to have a recreational area. Land also provides spaces for the growth of crops, forests, grasslands, and wilderness areas. So anything really that grows on the land is also considered part of our land resources because you have to have the land to grow the crops. You have to have the land to raise the cattle. Okay, some other examples here. We have solar farms. So you have solar panels, you have wind farms, we have forests, we have roads, etc. So a lot of this stuff is land resources. So publicly managed land. So more than 828 million acres in the U.S. are publicly managed lands. These are managed by federal, state, and local governments and tribal governments. About 28% of the land in the U.S. is managed by the federal government, so by different federal government agencies. So it's not all just the federal government. There are different agencies that control the land and manage it. This supports recreational uses, grazing, and mineral and energy resources. So national forests are managed for sustainable yield and recreation. So national forests, we get a lot of lumber from. Wilderness areas are maintained in their natural state and protected from development. This provides habitat for endangered species usually, but just any wildlife species really. Sustainability of human societies and the biodiversity that supports them really requires responsible land management. So a map showing federally managed land. We can see a lot of the federally managed land is out west and in Alaska. We do have some here in West Virginia as well. But you have, say, the Bureau of Indian Affairs. You have areas here in the Four Corners region. You've got North and South Dakota. A lot of these are tribal reservations. Bureau of Land Management. So we have a lot of areas out here that are Bureau of Land Management. A lot of these are grazing lands. And then we go on down, we got Bureau of Reclamation, you've got Department of Defense, you got Fish and Wildlife Service. Most of the ones we have in West Virginia are the Forest Service, the National Forest Service, and National Park Service. Okay. But just to give you an idea of where a lot of these federally managed lands are. Again, a lot of them are out west. So the national parks play several roles in this system. So one of those roles is to preserve scenic and unique natural landscapes. Also preserves and interprets the country's historic and cultural heritage. So we have a lot of historic sites that are part of the National Park Service. Protects wildlife habitats and wilderness areas. Also provides areas for various types of recreation. So the National Park Service does provide a lot of different services. About 50% of national park land is designated as wilderness, and basically wilderness areas are just left undeveloped. Okay, so these are just areas where the land is left to be natural. And the National Wildlife Refuges functions here to provide protection of habitats and breeding areas for wildlife and to provide protection for endangered species. The one main National Wildlife Refuge we have in West Virginia is the Ohio River Islands. There are a bunch of islands on the Ohio River, and those are all very unique little habitats that the National Wildlife Refuge has a system set up there. Permits can be obtained for the following as long as they are compatible with the purposes of the refuge. So you can apply for a permit to go fishing, to trap animals, to farm, to log, etc. But it does have to fit in with the purposes of the system of that particular wildlife refuge. And the National Wildlife Refuges are actually managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, so which is part of the Department of the Interior. So that is the agency that is over the National Wildlife Refuge system.